There are many, many things. One thing, which I discovered some 50 years ago, is the tombstone of Palenque. I have to explain you this. Palenque is in Mexico. Palenque was a Maya city, an old Maya city. And in Palenque, there is a pyramid called the Temple of Inscription. And deep beneath, under the Temple of Inscription, they found a gigantic tombstone, ein Grabstein. It's quite a block because it's 3.8 meter long and 2.2 meter large. And on this block, a fantastic engraving. You see a man bending forward, almost like a racing motorcyclist. He has some sort of oxygen mask on his nose, and he uses his two hands to manipulate some control. He's sitting on a sort of chair, and the heel of his left foot is on a kind of pedal. And behind him, he's sitting in a sort of capsule. And out of the capsule, you see something like a linking flame. Another point, which is always mysterious and great, is still the unknown chambers and rooms in the Great Pyramid. According to archaeology, there are only 3 rooms in the Great Pyramid. The so-called King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and under the pyramid is a so-called unfinished chamber. In fact, there are many other chambers in the Great Pyramid which are not known to the public. And I ask myself, why do they not tell it to us? And I have a reason why. The Great Pyramid was not only constructed by ancient Egyptians, there are other forces. Now just imagine they find in one of the rooms an inscription which is not from ancient Egypt. This would be a catastrophe for the Egyptians, so they cannot tell it to the public. It would be a disaster in Egyptology. I was educated as a strict Catholic in a boarding school led by Jesuits. And of course, when I was a boy, the great God was absolutely the most sensational thing in my life. By the way, I still am a deep believer in God. I never lost my God. But God had to have certain qualities. For example, God would never make a mistake, or God would never lie, or God would never use a vehicle in which to move around from one point to the other. Now in this school, in this boarding school, we had to translate passages of the Bible from German to Latin and from Latin to Greek. And of a sudden I realized that in these biblical texts you find the God who is flying down, for example, on the holy mountain, flying down with trembling, loud noise, smoke, fire, and all these things. So I simply had doubts in my own education. I said, this can't be God. What are they talking about? Later, for example, in the Bible, you read the story of the prophet Ezekiel. Ezekiel describes how a vehicle comes out of the clouds. He describes the wheels, the legs, the metal. He even describes the noise which this vehicle makes. He compares the noise with the trembling and so on. So all this, I have asked me, are they visions, just dreams, or are these true stories which is handed down? And finally, I have come to the conclusion I have to look for other communities in antiquity if they have similar recordings. And then it all started, because you find them all over. So one day I had the idea, if this is not God, what they have described in their old holy books, who is it? Could it be extraterrestrials? That's how it all started, by the way. In the meantime, 50 years have passed, and I have traveled millions and millions of kilometers, and I have looked for indications to support such a hypothesis. Indications we find in old traditions, for example, in the old Indian language. We find them in the holy traditions of mankind, in the holy book like the Bible. And of course you find indications outside. For example, all over the world, prehistoric men, they designed some beings with helmets or halos around their head. Or you find indications in astronomy. The so-called gods, they were teachers. They have taught mankind, humanity in the past. And so often they have given precise details about astronomy which prehistoric Stone Age man could not have found out by himself. So there are many thousands of indications. I must admit, however, we never found a conclusive proof. I was never in position to find, for example, an object which is extraterrestrial. But such an object we will find sooner or later, because from the scientific community we were never looking for it. Well, first of all, I myself have never seen a UFO. Although I had a certain contact, but I never saw a UFO. Probably they run away when Erich von Däniken shows up. Now, on the other hand, I know, of course, a lot of the literature in the field of UFOs. And I must admit that maybe 80% you can explain in a way or the other. But it is a fact that some of the UFO sightings have been held secret by governments, by CIAs, by the ancient Soviet Union, etc. And your question is why? Why are they doing this? Because they are afraid. First of all, just imagine that the United States, they spend every year billions of dollars for their defense. And now they just realize that some strange being, UFOs, are flying around, they can do nothing against it. It's a shock. Then you have, of course, the scientific community. The scientific community, including the astronomical community, until today, they say it might be that out there is life. But if life is there, this sort of life, or this form of life, would be completely different to us. And even if they would be similar to us, they would never have a chance to make these gigantic distances from one star to the other. That's why some secret services and some governments, they think we must prepare mankind slowly for such a possible event. We cannot tell them right away the truth. Some of the crop circles are fakes. We know it. Some students made some fakes, even with their professors. But many others are not fakes, they are true. And the question is, why? What is this? Is it some sort of UFO or what? I don't have an answer. All what I have is a speculation. I could imagine that beings, intelligent beings from another dimension, it doesn't have to be necessarily from outer space, from big distances. It could be another dimension like time, or another dimension, because there are many other dimensions next to our dimension. So an intelligent form of life from another dimension tries to communicate with us. And they have the possibility to do this with crop circle. But of course, humans are so stupid, they don't believe in nothing. Soon as they have one fake, they say everything is fake. And they don't take it seriously. And it's a shame for the scientific community that they do not take these phenomena seriously. I am sure if we would answer in the same way, for example, we would create crop circles, they send us a mathematical message. And now we continue with the mathematical message. Then we have some sort of communication between the other dimension and us. But in this world, nothing happened. There is definitely life out there. There are billions and billions of stars, and simply from point of view of statistics, there must be thousands and thousands of extraterrestrial civilizations out there. And of course, some of these civilizations are much more advanced than us. We are still trying to make contact with extraterrestrials in form of radio signals. But radio signals for them is probably a primitive way of getting into contact. There must be other meanings than radio signals, because radio signals, as everybody knows, in 1 second you have 300,000 kilometers. That means if you have a contact, for example, with the Alpha Centauri, which is around 4 light years away, and now we would ask them with radio signals, how are you? Has Jesus Christ visited you too? And it takes 8 years before you get the answer. That makes no sense in interstellar communications. So an advanced civilization must have other meanings of communication. So I do not exclude these cases of contact, which you say. The problem we have, different humans, different peoples, they tell us they have contact, some sort of mental contact. The problem is you have to believe them or not, because they have nothing in their hand. No proof. You always have to believe it. Are these personalities honorous personalities? Are they correct, or are they telling us stories? So that's the problem we have. You believe it or you don't believe it. According to the Maya calendar, the extraterrestrials will return. But now you have to explain the Maya calendar. We have a calendar in our Western world which has 365 days. The Mayas also had a 365 calendar, which is very useful for the nature, for example. You know, now you can make seedings, etc. Then they had a second calendar, which only had 260 days. Now you have to imagine two different cogwheels. One cogwheel is a little one with 260 cogs. The other one is a bigger one, 365 cogs. Now you put these two cogwheels together and you make a marking, for example, with a red lipstick. Now you start to turn these two cogwheels. How long will it take before the red marking comes together again? It's exactly 18,980 days or 52 years. The Mayas believed that every 52 years or multiplication of 52, the gods will return. Now, except of these two cogwheels, they have a third one, which is called the long count. So you can play this game with the red marking over 3 cogwheels. The point now is, at what time did the cogwheels start to rotate? Or what time was the beginning of the Maya calendar? You can calculate, transfer the Maya calendar into our figures. And the starting point is August 11th, 3114 BC. So 3114 BC, something very important happened for the Central American people, because that was the point of their calendar starting, the different wheels. The starting point of a calendar is for every culture something extremely important. For us, for the Christian, it was the birth of Jesus Christ. For the Muslim community, it's Muhammad going to Medina. For the old Jewish religion, it's the creation of the world. So the starting point of a calendar is extremely important for the culture. What happened in Central America on August 11th, 3114 BC? They say it, the Maya, in their books, in the Chilam Balam books. They say it was the day where the gods have descended from the stars to us human. That's why they have the starting point. Now, as soon as you have a starting point, you can calculate easily at what time will these red markings come together again and transfer to our calendar. It turns out to be the 22nd December 2012. According to Maya tradition, when the 3 cogwheels are in the 0 position again, December 22nd, 2012, then the gods return from their long voyage. So that's why we say the gods will return. So far, the Maya calendar is absolutely precise. The problem is just we don't know for sure if our calendar is precise. Because we say, today we calculate we have 2008 years since the birth of Jesus Christ. But what if they started their counting 30 years later? So we have a problem with the calculation into our calendar. For me, it would be okay and great when the gods return, be it 2012 or maybe 5 years later, I don't care. I am a deep believer in God, and I want to explain this. You know, my hypothesis is that some thousands of years, our forefathers were still primitive Stone Age people. Some extraterrestrial spaceship arrived here. Our Stone Age people could not understand what this was, and they believed that these extraterrestrials are gods. Of course, we know there is only one God. So it's a misunderstanding from our forefathers. So once you have this in your head, you can ask yourself, okay, where did these extraterrestrials come from? They must have an evolution or a creation or something. You can now speculate that they have been visited from another solar system. All right, and the other, again from another solar system. You can play this game for billions and billions of years, it doesn't matter, but finally you arrive to a starting point. And there at the starting point, with all respect and all religions, you say, here is God, here is creation. So I never lost my belief in God. I'm one of these few people who still pray every day. Of course, I want to be active as long as possible. We all love life, but I'm not the fear of death, but because I know it's just one step to the next door. Well, we know that in some belongings we have a mess on this planet, but on the other hand, we are intelligent. And mankind normally does nothing. They are just swimming until the water is close to their mouth. And soon as the water is high up here, they start to think and to work and to function and to run and to do something. Of course, we will have a climate change. That's true. But on the other hand, we had climate changes in the past too, without our smoke and our pollution. Of course, it will happen one day that maybe the axis of the earth will change. That happened in the past too. Billions and millions of humans will probably die, but some will survive, it will continue. Of course, we will have contact with extraterrestrials. I suggest at latest with the next 10 years, if not earlier. This will create problems. But we are intelligent enough, and hopefully we receive help from somebody, that we can solve all these problems. I don't think that there is one problem which will kill mankind. Some of us will always survive. I'm an optimist. Well, there is a company in the United States who has the right to make a film about my life. And they will start filming this coming fall. I don't know what the outcome will be because I'm not part of it. They are actors and whatever they do, let's see. Another American film company has the rights to film my books. In the meantime, I have 30 books on the market with the total edition of about 63 million. So this is interesting, for example, to make a documentary or to make video games and things according to the ideas of Erich von Däniken. So these things are in movement, but I couldn't say at what date they are out for the public. I just have it on the table here. I'm working on a book which I call, but this is a working title, it's not the final title. I call Erich von Däniken Total. You know, in my previous books, I always have speculated and have hypotheses and theories, and in the meantime, I say no. I'm knocking them down and say, here you have it, believe it or leave it. I don't care. I'm 73 in the meantime, and I have to come to the close. And in this new book, I just bring the hardest, absolutely the hardest evidence, mostly in pictures, 400 pictures. Then make about what you wish. So the book will be on the market next spring, I think. This club of non-lying men is true. It's a fact. The club exists since at least 20 years or even more. And in the moment we are about 50 men, and whenever we come together, we do not lie. Or when two of these men come together, they don't lie to each other. Soon as, for example, we are sitting on a table, on a restaurant table, 3 or 4 of these men, and the third person comes on the table, which is not member of the club. You can continue to lie, whatever, it doesn't matter. But when we are among us, we do not lie. It is a fact that only men are in this club. By the way, this club has no, we have nothing to pay. There is no secretary, there is nothing. It's just 3 men who gives the hand, say, okay, we don't lie anymore. But only men. Why? My wife, and I am married since 48 years, she one day said, why don't you accept us women? I said, Elizabeth, you create a club of non-lying women, but this will never work, because after 2 or 3 years, women among them start to lie for some reasons. With men, it's easier. I don't know why.